welcome back to episode 2 of the VRF Tech Talk podcast. I am still Donald Felice. Today I'm actually joined by Roman Baugh, so I'll let him do his introduction. You know about me.
I work for Kalo Services. Used to work for Daikin Comfort. A lot of you guys know me through the Tech Talk page, maybe my, Facebook, YouTube videos, kind of all over the place with VRF and VRV, just trying to spread the knowledge and the wealth with a lot of technicians who just, don't have any idea what they're doing and just still, lack of support without understanding of where to go and who to talk to. So I think we got some good topics for today, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. We're gonna keep it in the basics for a little bit until we get a little bit more comfortable with what we need to talk about as a whole. But for today, I think we want to start with the basics of what you run into when you get your service call for a VRF system and where you should start, right? Because this is not a package unit, right? There's potentially more than one compressor. There's definitely more than one head. So where do you go from when you get a service call to a VRF job that has 30 fan coils on it? What do you do with that? Where do you put your service tool? How do you interpret some of the information that you're seeing? So that's what we're going to cover today.
Yeah, no. So, to that point, a lot of techs who might be listening to this, you might be in your van, you might be driving to work or driving to this service call, and you had to look up a podcast really quick to find out what the heck you're doing. You're coming across this equipment for the very first time, and it's extremely overwhelming because, again, it's not that one-to-one connection. It's not everything in a package unit on a roof or standalone on the ground. There's these systems that have been woven intricately throughout buildings and designs from engineers that just, sometimes are almost impossible to find, through just walking around the place and actually asking questions. And so it's very overwhelming when you've never done it before, or even, this is your fifth or sixth or seventh time. I mean, hell, I still look at systems and I'm still lost sometimes. So where do you go and what are the steps, right? Step one, get in your service van and go to the service call. All right. Step two, my opinion here would be, actually try to get as much information as possible from your client, your clientele, if that's the director of maintenance, if that's the facility engineer, if it's a bystander, hopefully not just standing in the lobby always complaining. What are they complaining about? What's the issue, right? Why are you here, right? What made them roll a service truck to send you to this call, right? What do you have to add to that, Donald?
Yeah, and I think what I need to add to that is that's true, right? You have to purpose why you're on the job site, why you're getting the service call. So, I always come back to those key words, all the W's, right? That we all know that who, what, when, where, why. Yeah. We're trying to figure out the why, but we need to know everything else so that we can come up with that answer. And if you don't know why you're there, you're never going to get an answer. You're never going to be able to come up with a solution for the client.
Yeah, or worst case, you're on a facility that has 23 VRF systems and you're looking at the wrong one. That is the worst feeling in the world, driving to a client's building, thinking you know what you're doing, right? Oh man, I've been to 2 manufacturers classes. I'm the VRF guy for my company. And then you go and you look through all these indoor units and the outdoor unit and come to find out you're on the wrong system that they complained about in the first place.
I mean, I have so many stories that's happened to me, and there's one that always comes back to my brain is I should have done the due diligence of researching myself, but I didn't. I took the word of the facilities engineer to look at that system. We were dealing with a grounded compressor, or we're dealing with a potential grounded compressor. I'm megging out the compressor, I don't see a ground. We keep getting this E2 error on the central screen, but it's not showing up on the condenser. And then 4 hours into troubleshooting on a 100-degree roof, we're on the wrong building. And it should have been a clue to me at the very start of this when I didn't find a grounded compressor that we had an issue.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, right? So 100-degree roof, your mind is baking. It's a 5 o'clock on a Friday, or Lord forbid, it's 10 p.m. on a Saturday, and this is an after hours call. And your on call guy, which is you, has never rolled your van to a VRF call before, and your VRF guy isn't on call right now, and he's not answering his phone, and so you have to go. And it's easy to get overwhelmed with overthinking the job, right? It's easy to overthink that this is super complicated. I've never done this before, and panic. But remember, panic is the opposite feeling that we should have, right? Think about the basics. Why am I showing up to this job? What are they complaining about? Okay, and then verifying the system that I'm looking at is the correct system. Just because someone tells you it's the correct system, we have to trust but verify. And that would be at the centralized controller, get as much information as you can there, and then actually go and physically verify the error code is present on the outdoor unit. If it's not there, the label, because here's the thing, right? We assume that human beings, out of the kindness of their heart, are always looking out for the good nature, right? They're always doing the right things. We're never making mistakes, right? Humans are perfect. And so you're going to go to that call at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and you're going to look at the centralized controller, and it's going to say CU2. And you're like, okay, well, that's a low number, easy to remember. You're going to go to the roof, and you're going to look at the outdoor module that says CU2 on the data tag that's been printed off and screwed to the unit and the disconnect, okay? And you open up the unit, and there's no error code on it, right? The likelihood is that's not CU2, right? They just didn't label it correctly. And so, large facilities, this happens all the time. Someone had got crazy with the label maker, or maybe they changed the designations last minute. It happens. But again, it's not that this is a magical programming issue with the system and the error code just doesn't show up. Logic tells us that you're just on the wrong system. So don't overthink it. Stick to the basics and actually verify the system that you're looking for and that it is actually correct, right? We are actually looking at, because then you can put in your notes like, okay, it said CU2 on the ITM. It was really CU6. And here is where it's at. And I verify here's the error code, and then I start troubleshooting it. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know if you've ever run into this one, but how common is it to have mixed up panels?
Oh my God. So okay, here we go. To that point, right? Okay, I'm here for an E2. I've talked to the customer, or I've talked to the maintenance engineer, or the director of engineering on the facility, and he's like, "Yep, nope, it's got an E2. It keeps happening. Okay, yep, okay, let me go look at it." And I get on the roof and I find, okay, yep, found the right one. It's not labeled CU2. It's actually labeled CU6, but I found the E2. Where is the electrical panel to turn this off, right? Then let's say there's no disconnects, where they bypass the disconnects, because it's the Wild West out here in Florida. And you can't find the right panel to turn off the power to disconnect the compressor to actually check it to ground. It happens all the time. And so then you're chasing your tail, trying to find somebody who has the information, just so you can troubleshoot that unit. And I mean, it happens all the time, man. All the time.
And that brings up a good point. Is part of the troubleshooting process is know know where everything is, right? So if that means that you have to ask the building engineer for the set of prints that's 15 years old, at least you have an idea of where something might be. The means of disconnect for these units is definitely important. So I'm not sure what the code states in Florida versus what it is in California, but line of sight, that means that in California, you don't always have a local disconnect. You might have a panel that's 40 feet away that has a
Yeah.
breaker panel.
Line
So
of sight.
knowing where your power source is, right, it does two things, right? It'll keep you safe, it'll keep you alive, but
Yeah.
it'll also allow you that troubleshooting step of I need to disconnect power to check anything in that machine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
know where your sources are, know where your power's from, right? And then we can preach, wear your PPD and be safe, right? But that's all very important. But know
Yeah.
where your power sources are.
Yeah, and so again to that point, and I got a story that ties perfectly into this. 2 weeks ago, we had a client, VRV3, heat recovery, single port BS boxes, assisted living facility. That's as far as the information can go for this story. And so we're out there, we're troubleshooting it, and we have a U4 on the system. And okay, yep, classic U4. Someone turned the power off somewhere, right? We're looking. 2 hours later, we find there's a BS box with the power off. And you're like, okay, easy, man, score, right? Turn the power back on. We're good to go. It'll all start communicating again. 4 hours, three maintenance technicians, including the building manager, could not find the breaker to turn on the power to this BS box in the hallway. The disconnect did not have power, and so there was a breaker somewhere in the building that was tied to this box to give it power. We eventually got to the point where I told my technician, like, listen, okay, we're chasing our tails for 4 hours. The customer needs air conditioning, right? We're not going to come back to find a breaker. Just run temporary power from this source to another box that does have power through the disconnect safely, and daisy chain that power temporarily to get them back up to speed. So in this process of when we're troubleshooting, sometimes it's easy to just say, okay, the easy solution is to just find the breaker. But when you get down to soups to nuts here, if you can't do that simple task, sometimes we have to step back and think outside the box and think, okay, what do I need to really get this system running? Am I really going to leave this customer without air? Now, again, this is not a fault of my technician. This is not a fault of anyone there. It's just not knowing the building. And so,
Sure.
to that point, sometimes you have to get creative and think outside the box and just say, okay, what do I really need? I just need 120 volts for this box to be powered to get the system back up and running. Okay, let me confirm that they're okay with me doing this safely, right? And that following all the right electrical codes, not just laying wire around with wire nuts, and get them operational again until they can finally. And it's funny, they called me this morning and they said they found the breaker. It's
Yeah.
2 weeks later. So, it's one of those things where you don't want to like, cut your nose off to spite your face, right? Don't overthink the process. Again, VRF is complicated, but I mean, there's certain areas where it's really complicated, but most of it's really not that complicated. I just need
Right.
power. Where can I get power? Okay, are you okay with running temporary power? Yes. Okay, did it. Boom. It could have been an easy 30-minute call
Right.
to just do that instead of chasing it for 4 hours. So don't
Right.
overthink it.
Right. Go back to the basics. Think easy before you think hard, right? Because
Yes.
like Roman said in there, is like most of the time it does come down to something that's relatively simple. Now, with that said, is right, we do have some complicated technology inside of these
Yep.
VR machines, but right, we're still dealing with refrigeration. We're still dealing with the same refrigeration cycle that a package unit has versus a regular heat pump versus anything else. It's still the same cycle. How we're managing it is different. Now, that brings up the next point of like when. When is a very, very important term of my system is broke. Okay, great. When did it happen? Right? Did it happen a month ago? Did it happen a week ago? Did it happen 2 minutes ago? When are you having the problem that we discussed, right? So when you go to the job site, you need to know an idea of when it's happening. Because
Yeah.
if it's an intermittent noise, I don't, I'm not going to spend 8 hours listening to something to see if I can hear a noise. But
Yeah.
if I have an idea, if it happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'll show up at 1:30 and wait an hour to hear it.
Yeah. 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 Or I'll put a service checker on it and record it
Yeah.
overnight if it's at midnight. Again, it's those conversations because you're going to get people who love them to death, are going to exacerbate issues, and there are people out there who over dramatize things when they happen and how they happen, and so we got an E6 and it keeps happening, and it's like, okay, when's the last time did you get an E6? It was a year and a half ago, and before that it was 2 years before that, but it keeps happening, and you're like, okay, like I'm concerned just like you are. However, time plays a factor in my concern
Right.
here. If we're getting an E6 every 2 hours, that's a problem. Let me dive into that deeper, right? But if you're telling me that you have a nuisance trip that's been happening since the beginning of time when the equipment was actually started, that's a different conversation. When does it actually happen? And this also plays into the other side of that. So it's not just the length of time between, but also the time of year. When are you having these
Yeah,
issues? Well, it's
definitely.
always the peak of summer when it's 115 degrees outside. Well, now I'm probably going to go investigate charge issues. I'm going to look at the application, the diversity of the system. It's a more complicated scenario. Well, it happens every time it rains, right? Okay, well then I'm looking at something that might be not protected from weather or water, installation, comm wires, and conduit, which is a whole other conversation between modules and not being sealed correctly, especially with northern climates like we've experienced. Not me personally. People in the group have experienced. Um, but nonetheless, it all plays a factor in determining where I should look and the severity of how deep I dive into that and how much time do I spend in that. There is no quick answer. There's no quick draw, shoot from the hip answer as to when and where and why. It's again we're kind of like detectives and we're building a case to figure out,
Absolutely.
yeah, do I need to dive deeper into this? And it would be our experience to say, well, if I'm getting an E6 every 2 years, sure, it's a nuisance. However, I'm not going to, recancel or schedule all my calls for the next week to come out here and stay until the end of time to find the problem.
Right. Right. So there is a time and a place for every diagnosis, but using your best judgment on your time, right? Because at the end of the day, your time is what's costing the customer money, and if they're not happy with what's going on in that time, they're going to let you know. So
Yeah.
using your time effectively, to put their best interests first to make sure that you're going to come up with a solution for them and everybody be happy. So how many times have you spent way too much time on a problem just to find out that like, oh, this
Instead of
is
It's not a problem.
It's not a problem.
Well, and here's the other one. And I love this one. I love these questions, right? And the questions, it's really not about like, okay, we could talk to the customer till we're blue in the face, but are we asking the right questions, right? Are you asking questions that are going to get you to the root cause of this problem? Because there's going to be things that don't matter, that you're going to want to ask, or might want to jump to conclusions about. And again, let the customer paint the picture for you. Don't make assumptions and try to bulldoze them in the conversation. It's that whole 80-20 rule they teach salespeople, right? To listen 80% and talk 20%. But the other questions I like to ask too, and these are two great questions, right? How long has it been locked out? And, how many times have you had to replace it or reset it, right? Those are some serious questions right there, because again, you're here to troubleshoot a compressor, and it's like, okay, well, I'm here to troubleshoot this, and that module's not running. We had to lock it out, and it's like, okay, well, when did you lock it out? Well, I'm not really sure. Let me look at my notes. It's a few days ago, and they look, and it's like, it was 8 months ago that you locked that out. Like, yeah, I'm here for an E2 now for the other compressor. Like,
Right.
duh. Like that's a no brainer. You shouldn't
I
have
like
locked it out for 8 months. Time eludes people sometimes. And okay, well, how many times have we replaced this compressor? Right. That's another great question. This is our seventh one. Well, you think after like 5, maybe even 3, that I'd start asking questions of like, why are we changing compressors like candy here?
I'm going for 1.
I
Um,
love 1. I love 0 too, but.
I like to add to that is why you're here. Lost my train of thought. Um, what were your 2 questions again?
No, my 2 questions are how many times have you like reset it or changed that specific part, like if it's an inverter board, and then how long has it been locked out for? Usually module wise or compressors.
And where are your maintenance records?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
VRF for the longest time had this stigma of being a maintenance-free system.
Love to
It's
punch
not.
that engineer in the face.
It couldn't be further from the truth, right? Everything that has moving parts requires maintenance. It might not have grease fittings. That's fine, but it still requires maintenance.
Yeah,
So one of the first things that I like to look for is a maintenance record. When have your filters been changed? Have you checked the flares? Have you checked your electrical connections? What have you done to make sure that this system is potentially going to be able to live on for 10, 20 years? Right? We all do maintenance on our vehicles, our cars, right? We have to do oil changes, we have to do tire rotations, we have to change our brakes. There's no difference in this machine than a car, right? We have to change some components once in a while. It's part of maintenance.
yeah,
So having that information will ultimately help you troubleshoot a system more. If the filters haven't been touched in 6 months and you have a compressor that's gone out, well, I think a good place to start looking is at your airflow.
yeah. So let me walk you through another scenario. Okay, so you're on call. Man, I really hate on call. This is just my go-to here. You're on call, right? You go to the job, you speak to the maintenance engineer. He's going to walk you up to the unit. You go to the unit and you open the panel and you look at the error code, and the error code is LC14. Now, immediately you're going to jump to conclusions and you're going to start checking inverter boards. You're going to take it all apart and you're going to walk him down memory lane about the last time you had an error code like this, and it was a whole messy process of replacing the whole cabinet and blah 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 blah. Right? It's that whole 80-20 rule. Just let them talk, because they'll usually hang themselves with a conversation, because they want to tell you how great they are as maintenance engineers, which is great. Again, walking through an LC14. Now we know that's an inverter board communication fault. But here's the question we should ask before we get any closer. I pulled the panels, I got an LC14, and I stopped. And I turned to the maintenance engineer and I asked, has anybody touched this piece of equipment in the past week, 2 weeks that I need to know about? You know what? Matter of fact, we had our technician from the other building come over because he's got experience with VRV. He's on the Facebook group of VRF Tech Talk, and he got some advice. And he changed out the inverter board because we got an E2. And so that's funny that you ask. It hasn't run since he changed out the inverter board. And it's like, well, yeah. And now I'm not looking for an inverter board that's faulty. I'm looking for an inverter board that's not plugged in correctly, right? Those are 2 different animals. And so it's so easy for me as a technician to just jump straight into a troubleshooting tree or in the service manual and start going through the things that I know to check for an LC14. But again, without the context of asking that question of, has anybody touched this? Have you had another service company come out here? Can I see their service ticket? What did they do on this piece of equipment? Just so I know. Well, they changed all the inverter boards and the fan driver board, and you have an LC14 now. What was your original error code? Well, if they can't tell me that, there's this great setting in setting mode 1 where I can go back and look at the last error code or fault retry, or go to the centralized controller and look at the error history. Error history paints a beautiful picture. People don't talk about it enough. Like if I go to an ITM and I look at a specific indoor unit, and this is the one that has an error code, or if it's a system, and I look at that error code history, I'm going to see that progression, right? It's going to be F4, F4, L8, L8, E2, and E2. And so it's like, okay, well, clearly someone stopped changing the filters, right? And then it started getting liquid refrigerant back to the compressor. And then the compressor started overamping because of bearing damage on the L8s. And then it went to E2, it grounded out. Well, no duh. And then they tried to reset it instead of having to call somebody, and it E2'd a second time. That right there tells me exactly everything I need to know. And I can even see with timestamps how far apart, how long was that story? Was it a 1 week story, or is this like a 2 year progression story here? It's a sad story nonetheless,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
still, it's overlooked.
my favorite is the U0, right? The U0 that trips once in a while, and then it starts becoming more frequent, and then it starts coming every day, and then all of a sudden you've got an E2.
It's a cry for help, right? The system is saying, please,
Hell yeah.
I'm,
Fix me.
I'm
Fix me.
dying. Somebody, please, just come help me.
Yeah.
And so, and we can sit here and we can blame this person or that person or whatever. It doesn't matter. They've called you to come and help them, right? You're
Right.
here to help people. You're here to find a solution to the problem, not there to point fingers or make blame. It's a waste of time and energy. So again, ask the right questions to the right people and weigh what they tell you, whether you can trust what they say, right? Because then this comes back to the other side, right? So you're going to ask questions, you're going to get answers. Do you trust it, right? So I'm changing out a compressor and I'm asking them, hey, there's 3 different charge amounts sharpied inside this panel, and each one was crossed off, saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Do you know what the factory charge is, or what the calculated charge is? That the correct one, the correct calculated charge for this? And I just made a video for my YouTube page today about this, but do you know what that is? Oh yeah. It's 74 pounds. Well, that's weird because that's not one of the numbers inside the panel here out of the 3 that have been
Right.
scratched out.
Oh, but that's what I recovered, right? Oh, 74 pounds recovered. Well, this is a triple module system. Each one comes with 25 in it, so you recovered a pound less than what's machine takes. So,
Yeah. No, and it's good. And so again, it comes back to asking the right questions is the first step. And then the second step after that, our steps or numbers are all messed up in this podcast, but it doesn't matter. The next step after that would be, how much can I trust that information, right? Trust but verify. He's telling me 75 pounds, but again, to Donald's point, 75 pounds is the factory charge from the outdoor condensers. That doesn't account for the line sets or the additional length or any of the connection capacity of all the other little nuances that go inside that calculation to give you the total charge of that system. And so again, I'm not going to trust that number. I'm going to say, well, okay, thanks. And think to myself, this guy has no clue what he's talking about. And I'm either going to dive into the records and see when it was installed. Do they have an express report? Can I get a general idea of where everything's at? Or am I actually going to be walking this thing out to find out, hey, it's very close to this?
and that's
Yeah.
unfortunately sometimes for that service guy, that's really the only way you can get that charge is you're going to have to do some legwork to give the best estimation you can on how much pipe and what size you think it is.
Yeah.
Now, any can't speak for them all, but most reps, anybody that's selling this commercial VRF project, should have some sort of record, whether it's the best record, an as-built, or if it's, this was a construction set and we're not really sure. Anytime I hand out an express report from something that I personally didn't do, it always comes with a disclaimer. Hey, this may or may not have discrepancies, right? So
Yeah.
take this for what it's worth. This will get you in the ballpark, but you're going to have to do the legwork.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and add to that too, right? You're going to get the guys who are listening right now, and they're like, I don't care what Roman and Donald say. They have no clue what they're talking about. I charge off of service checker data. I don't need to walk nothing out, right? I get paid by the minute, son. So, I'm collecting that paycheck. I'll sit there all day charging this thing. And again, you can charge a system based off service checker data. I'm not saying you can. However, when we're talking about going through educating people. That's what we're here to do. We're here to share my experiences. We're here to share Donald's experience, and we've got a lot of experience with this equipment, guys. Not to say that we know it all, because we still learn things every day. However, when we're talking about teaching other people and instilling good practices as a trade with each other, there's a certain thing that we do, and that is holding each other accountable and staying consistent with this stuff. And that is calculating the charge the way the manufacturer would like us to. Now, I'm not saying that I have never charged the system off service checker data, because I thought I was hot stuff at some point, and I did that. Right, I was at the top of the Dunning-Kruger curve, right, where about to fall down, and I thought I could charge every system by service checker data. And the thing is that you're so tied to what your ambient conditions are, what your load conditions are, what your connection capacity is, the status of the filters on every fan coil in that system, as well as the
Airflow.
outdoor heat exchanger, where the unit's located. Like there's just way too many variables to just blow through it, assuming that all the sensors are good. And again, the older the system gets, it's just more of a guess. You're charging it based off its current conditions. Now, Lord forbid the maintenance guy come back a week later and change all the filters and the airflow go up by 3 times, and now the system is undercharged. And that's because that's the way I charge it off service checker data. And so, again, I'm not here to fight anybody. It's all about understanding how these systems operate to know what I should be doing every single time. I can tell you without a doubt, if you're calculating charge based upon actual physical line set length, piping diameters, following that, either that express report, building your own express report, or technically I still don't even know how to build an express report, right? You could put it in front of me and I could wheedle my way through it. But again, you could use the charge calculation in the installation manual. All that documentation is online. It's not that hard to find.
It also comes with every unit.
It does, and it's in the Tech Hub app. So like we have no excuses to not follow the right instructions and information to calculate that charge. But again, that is the only correct way to do it, because that accounts for if your conditions are perfect and everything is good, this is what you should have, not based upon what I think I see in the system and how it's currently performing.
So I want to jump back to something that you said earlier. Is make sure you have all the information at your fingertips. And one of the most important things that often is overlooked is the service manual. Right? Mm-hmm. If you're getting a call, I would hope that your dispatcher or whoever's collecting the information to dispatch you is going to give you a model and potentially a serial number. So there's no excuse in this day and age to where you can't take that serial or that model number and put it in Google and download yourself that service manual. Having that service manual, it's not the best piece of document in the world. It's not going to tell you every single thing that's wrong with the machine, but by golly, it's going to tell you a whole lot more than you know about walking up to something blank. Having that document to on your iPad when you get to the roof, that will help you figure out what's going on in that machine tenfold.
Yeah, and again, to that point too, and I've gotten shot in the foot so many times. Man, I have made so many mistakes in my career. It's not even funny. But to that point, service manuals are the key, but also using the correct service manual is also another part of the key. I cannot tell you how many pieces of equipment I've showed up to, and I just glanced at it, and again, so now I don't make that mistake anymore. I have a Google Drive where I keep all my manuals. I keep them up to date. I go to Daikin City when I have to download things when I have to. Don't go there on purpose. But from that perspective, I want to make sure that the model number on my cover matches the model number of my equipment, and also that my manual is up to date. Daikin City has different versions of that manual. At the last end of those letters on that manual, it's going to have that A or that E or that EB or that B series. That means that they did a revision to the manual, and in the manual, it actually tells you what they added to the manual. Recently, we literally just got prediction codes added to the manual. And I say just now, like this was added back at the beginning of 2024 in January. We have prediction error codes for Amirion that was added to the service manual. They didn't hide it. They just updated it. And so again, it's having that up-to-date manual for the right model equipment that you're working on. Otherwise, the error code isn't going to make any sense. And 9 times out of 10, there are still those mystery error codes where none of us know anything about, which happen from time to time. I'm not gonna sit here and say that they don't. But most of them are all in the service manual, and make sure that you're just looking at the right manual. And I can't tell you how many guys call me about service manuals in regards to the Super Multi, and they're looking at VRVS manual. And like the error codes they're not cross compatible. Like they don't make any sense. Some are basic. U4 is always communication problem. However, there are very specific ones that don't make any sense for that particular series. So
UF.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and they mean different things. And mini splits is the same way. They carry the same naming, number, letter, code over to mini splits as they do with VRV and all the other things along with that. And so they don't translate well on some pieces of equipment. And so don't just assume that you know what this is. You get the guys who print off the error code chart and they're like, "Yeah, it's a this," and it's like, no, that was for VRV2 when they made that error code list of
Right.
the cross compatible chart of like the
Oh
A
yeah.
and the U and the 4. They connect here, right?
Or
That
DrDyken.com.
DrDyken.com. Yeah, send a text message. We'll get a response. I wonder if that line is still active. I should text that. But that's all we had as service technicians back in the day with VRV2, and then and that's what I cut my teeth on, and then VRV3 after that. And so we've come a long way since those days, and the Tech Hub app is good. Keep it updated. I know that takes forever and it crashes all the time, but bear with them. It's better than nothing. Back in my day, I didn't have that. Right? We had Dr. Dyken.
I carried, bro, I carried the manuals, right? I carried just
Yeah.
paperback
No.
manuals.
Yeah. No.
But to that point, right? Like U4, an ambiguous communication code. There's many subcodes, right? And all of those different subcodes have different meanings. So knowing what you're troubleshooting is key there, right? So if you're going into a U4, right? U4s kind of become the joke that somebody probably turned something off, and unfortunately, you're going to have to go look for something that doesn't have power. But there are certain U4 codes, like a U405,
Yeah.
might be missing a If you don't have thermostats on any of your units and you're trying to do startup, you'll get a U405.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing too, right? And they don't teach you this in school. The factory classes don't cover stuff like this, but out in the wild, when you run a system, especially a Mirion now, right? This is a new tidbit. When you run in a Mirion through test operation and you have an issue with one of your indoor units, the error code you are going to get at the outdoor unit is a U4. That does not mean that you do not have communicating equipment inside or have a communication issue. This is just something new that they've added, and they said, you know what? You don't really need to know the error code. You just need to know that there is an error code. And so you
Yeah.
run it through test op, and you get a U4, and you go inside, and this is a U9, that's a A3, this is an AO.
Well,
Yeah,
that's it exactly. I mean, it's existed all the way back to T series, specifically when you had FXTQs, TAs that use the condensate jumper. If that condensate jumper was open when you're trying to do startup, you'll get a U4 on the roof, and
yes,
you'll get the A code downstairs. But you won't know that unless you're standing in front of the touchscreen or the thermostat.
that's it. And so, what do you do as a technician? You jump to conclusions because your boss says you got to start this up, and you went to a class and you've watched my YouTube videos, but I'm not helpful at all. And you're listening to this podcast now, and you're like, okay, I jumped straight in there, and I'm looking for communications. I traced every wire out. I ran new wires, right? Like this wire is solid. Like I spent 2 days going through with a fine tooth comb just to find out that you jumped the gun here. Okay, take a deep breath. Okay, we're here to help. Take
Slow
a deep
down.
breath. Step back. Okay, you got a U4 at the outdoor unit. What do the indoor units look like, right? Are they all the same way? Are they like that on every floor, right? Because 9 times out of 10, if you slow down and you walk that process one step at a time and take a deep breath and not panic, you're going to find that everything's okay and that the issue was that someone didn't push that little tiny jumper in on the FXAQ on the wall mount in the IT room for that jumper plug for the condensate. And you just go click and AO goes away. You're ready to run. You run it through test op again. No problems. Whew. I mean, the first system I ever started, man, it kicked my butt up and down the street. It was a
Yeah.
BB&T bank VRV3. I designed the crap out of it. The project had 1,000,000 ball valves for 9 fan coils. I had it before and after the box, at the fan coil. I took the class. They said ball valves, ball valves, ball valves. And man, I believed them. Went to go turn the system on. It's heat recovery with BS boxes and everything. Went to turn the system on, and I got a UF. And then the Daikin rep at the time came out with his hotshot service tech. Been doing this for 10 years, he tried to tell us we had to rewire the entire building. He was like, "It's your connections, your wires, right? You got stranded wires, but they're all spaghettied under the screw terminals. So you got to pull them out and you got to straighten them out, and they got to be like this, right? The installation manual says you got to be like this, not like this. You got that this, not this." And so then, he had my techs run all over the place. So they went out there and they changed all the wires. UF, 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 UF. Oh my gosh. And the guy was there for 2 days just yelling at my people and saying, you got to rewire the whole building. Your wire stinks. It's not working. It's garbage. And then so it's a funny story. So then it was like, wait a minute, let me step back here. A million ball valves. What's the likelihood one of those is closed? What does actually UF error code mean? Let me go in the service manual. Let me see what the conditional causes are.
Read for meaning.
Yeah, and so wait a minute. No temperature exchange across the coil. Hey, did anybody check that ball valve? Has anybody gone through any of these ball valves? Went through all the ball valves. What about that one that got covered up with insulation over here? We'll dig it out of the insulation, and it's closed, right?
Yep.
It's closed. And again, if I had service checker on it, I could see that one of the fan coils didn't have a temperature change on the liquid line. Opened it up, fired it up, went through test operation beautifully, no issues. Oh man, what a nightmare. You're gonna have those, right? You're gonna have those that kick you down and knock you down over and over and over again. And as long as you get back up, take a deep breath, step back, and think about the things that you might be overlooking or overthinking, and go back to the manual, right? What does the manual really say, right?
Yeah.
What am I looking for? Okay, let me troubleshoot that now. Don't assume that it's the A1P board. Yeah, I got it. It's the A1P board. The
AOP.
programming is broken. It's broken. It needs a new A1P board. It's the program. They rushed this one through the line and they added some extra weird code and it just can't do it, right? No, that's never the case. It's always something you're overlooking. So step back and evaluate the situation. What are the conditions that are causing the error code? Okay, what can cause those conditions? Go and look at those areas. Don't overthink it like I do all the time.
Right. So, but to that point too, right? Like, if you're on a service call, think about the life of this system. If it's been installed for 5+ years, 10 years, 2 years, the problem you're having is recent. So,
Oh yeah.
in that 10 years, don't assume that something has failed until you can prove that something has failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
The U4, and I call the call center and they say I need an A1P in this fan coil. I'm like, well, did you
Mhm.
happen to check anything else? Do you just want a board? Like, glad to sell you a board, but I want you to get back running today, not
Yeah.
in a week from now or 2 weeks from now when we go find that branch selector that's turned off, right? Like, think about the system as an organic being, right? It's there, it's living, it's been living for 5 years. Now it has a headache and it stopped working. So
Yeah.
what caused that? It probably wasn't the brain fell out. So think about that when you're troubleshooting. Is just remember the basics. Just don't overthink it. These
Yeah.
systems are not that complicated.
Nope. No, and they are scary, right? I wish they put googly eyes on the panel to like make it less threatening for technicians when they come across it, right? It's just that's all like willy wobbly on the cover. But they didn't take my suggestion for some reason in the factory very seriously. But to that point, right? It's so easy to just overthink the entire process of troubleshooting and jump to conclusions about it not being and this is true to its core with service checker data. When you start getting into service checker data and the analysis, which we're going to have a podcast about that here soon, it's so easy to just jump to the conclusion that the programming is off, right? They're running oil return way too long and they're doing defrost too many times and like the software is flawed. Like this is a flaw. And it's like, what series of equipment are you working on? VRV3. There's no flaws in VRV3. That thing is built like a tank. Right? There's something that's causing other things to happen. So don't go down that tunnel vision road
Right.
of hanging your hat on something that's probably never happened before and not likely, right? Because again, these aren't that complicated. And so if you just stick to the basics of troubleshooting and understanding the systems, you're gonna get to the diagnosis eventually. And then it may be a painful process and it may take you a while. But again, learn from your mistakes, right? Go back and
Yeah.
rethink the situation that you went through. What could you have done better, right? We call this thing called self-evaluation. It's one of the hardest things to do because again, I'm not flawed. You are, but I'm not. As technicians, we have to understand that, as long as we're going out in the field and we're giving it our best, we're just trying to be better than the person we were before. Not comparing ourselves to other people or trying to be the best in the industry, right? We're just trying to focus on these problems and work through them one at a time.
Right. And I mean that brings up a good point of like service checker. Is it required? Not usually.
Long pause.
Not usually. Can you diagnose a VRV system without a service checker? Absolutely. It is not a required tool by any means. Does it give you a lot of information that could potentially help you diagnose a system? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But most of the error codes that you're going to run into are going to be easy to fix without it. So
Hmm.
it's not a required tool. Do I carry one with me every day? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the tool,
Yeah.
but it's not required.
Yeah. Yeah, and to that point, right, as technicians, we get in our mind that if we don't have these special tools or these specialty tools or things like that, then we can't do the job. And you got to think back and you say, well, listen, if it's a communication fault, if it's a power fault, if it's a under over voltage phase reversal, service checker's not going to help me.
Right.
That's not a tool that I can use for something like this. I'm
Right.
not sure. Sure, I could use a service checker to verify I can see all the indoor units. Maybe, yeah, sure, okay, I'll give you that one. But like power quality, like that's not going to help me with that. Missing remote controller, that's not going to help me. The faulty thermistor, yeah, that would help me. I could see the thermistor, but I could also do that at the BRC. Like there's a lot of workarounds in VRV that don't require specialty tools all the time. So
Sure.
don't hang your hat as a crutch like, well, I don't have my service checker, so I can't do anything. Come on, really? Can't do anything? Open the service manual. Where's the error code, right?
Yeah.
Ask the questions.
I think to me personally, the service checker is usually one of the last things I go to for troubleshooting. Is have we looked at the thermostats? Have we checked the field settings and make sure we're controlling to the right temperature? Do we have the temperature sensors reporting on the thermostat?
Yeah,
Um, have we gauged up to the machine to verify that it's not flat? Right,
yeah.
that's a big one.
UO.
You got a JA code. It says my high pressure transducer is bad. Like,
Yeah,
no, it's telling you that it's abnormal. It's
it's
not
out of
bad.
range.
It's out of range.
The
Have
range
you
is
gauged
0.
up? No. Okay, well, dollars to donuts. You gauge up. That machine's going to be sitting at 5 psi.
Yeah, yeah. And again, this is that common knowledge that you'll get through experience, but listening here, that's that wealth of knowledge and the great support group that we have on Facebook, and other places within our community here in the U.S. that there's these nuances with this equipment where it's like, hey, if it's that, 9 times out of 10, it's probably this, right? It's not really that. It could be. I'm not saying it isn't.
Right.
I've found them bad before, right? Like anybody else. But likelihood is very slim. You're probably just flat, right? And you go
Back
back
to the
into the error
basics.
code history, and it's L8, 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 L8. Okay, and it's VRV3, REMQ. The capillary tube's ruptured, and you lost all your charge.
Yeah. Go, go look for the puddle of oil underneath the compressor.
Yeah, is there oil on the roof? Yeah, you didn't strike, you didn't strike gold here. There's no oil field up on your roof. It's the system itself, the blue capillary tube, right? And it's that story that gets painted through the error code history, which is also why it's so important to the installers and commissioners out there, right? Just set the timestamp on your ITM, set the timestamp on your BRC controller, for the love of God. Just set the BRC time up, because if I go in there and I look at error code history and all the time is the same because no one set the clock up on that BRC,
1990.
I've got no idea when these error codes actually tripped and
Right.
the progression. It's useless. So just that's why that time function is there. It's a big pet peeve of mine, as you can tell. Just set it up. Like it takes nothing to go in there and mess with the code to actually set the time on your thermostat, your BRC controller.
So I think the main goal of today's podcast was just to give you an idea that you don't have to change your thought process to diagnose one of these systems. It's still the same. Well, I hope it's the same thought process that you would have walking into a roof pack or a Rebel rooftop or some kind of IntelliPack or whatever it is, a chiller, right? Like you still need to know what you're there for, why you got the call, what you're working on,
Yep.
and with that information, you can get the fix.
Yeah.
So just kind of to lightly drill that home is just don't be afraid of the process. Just work through it.
Yep. Yep. And to drill that home the hard way, suck it up and just keep working.
Do the work.
We're all working, okay? It's not easy out here for servicing VRV. It's not easy servicing VRF, right? We don't do this because we enjoy getting our butts kicked every day with something new on this equipment. No, we do it because we enjoy the challenge. We enjoy the industry, right? We're good at it, right? We're good at solving problems. But sometimes that does require us to step back and focus on the basics. We
Sure.
get so caught up in the extremes of complication and all the intricacies of it's integrated into BACnet and it's got an ITM and it's all these other things that are interlocked together, and it's like, whoa, what's your error code?
Right.
Oh, it's a U4. None of that stuff matters. Like, I don't care about that. Like, just filter it out, right? this is where I should go. This is what I should look at. It's so easy to jump to conclusions. So
You brought up the ITM, and like we'll make a couple more points before we wrap up. But when I do an owner training and I see the glazed look on everybody's face looking at this touchscreen controller, it's 10 inches. It's a 10-inch screen, and it's got all these icons on it, and they're looking at it and say, "Hey, it's nothing more than a fancy thermostat. Don't be afraid to poke the buttons, right? Like you're not going to break it unless you put your hand through it." So the same goes with the outdoor unit, right? You
Yep.
open up the panels and there's a spaghetti mess of copper in there, right? Oh,
Mhm.
take a step back,
Yeah.
look at the service manual and see what your piping diagram looks like,
Yep.
and then go back to the basics. Just don't forget the basics.
Don't forget the basics. Yeah.
And maybe that's a topic we should cover next is refrigeration basics of VRF, and like to give
Yeah.
people a little bit more idea of, yes, there is some more devices inside of a VRF machine, but we're
Basic.
still the same cycle.
Yeah, no, and again, yeah, and I've covered those in like small chunks and pieces, but it would be nice to just go through it soup to nuts, and with the refrigerant trainer that I have access to just kind of show what that looks like and why it matters and what we're doing, and kind of just work our way through the system. It sounds like a
Yeah.
great topic. So,
All right. Well, Roman, I appreciate your time today, and we'll see you on the next one.
yeah, man, anytime. You've got my number. Don't be a stranger. As everybody knows, I love to talk, especially to myself. So, yeah, appreciate it.
Right on. Have a great day.
You too, man.
Thanks.